Hi, everyone, and welcome to fan commentary on the final part of Return of Thunder. Now, I've always said that this really should have been 3 parts instead of 4. It would have been very difficult to actually do it that way, but I believe it would have been doable because most of the stuff that was not necessary, like the Mara Capri jokes in all 4 parts, if you cut them out and truncated certain things, and maybe if they had set up a few things in the previous episode, it definitely had worked as 3 parts because parts 1 and 4 are like the best versions story wise, while 2 and 3 are best at character. So if you were able to combine parts 1 and 2 and then just used 3 and 4 as one episode, I think it would have played out better. Now, this is, of course, the final hurrah for Choobo's character, and I really wish they had just simply finished him off just like they did in Hurricaneer. He got a really good send off. Even though I always disagree that, Choobo's set up as a bumbling idiot, when you watch part 4, you can buy it because he was pushed to the point because of Lothar hating him, everyone hating him, the Thunder Rangers taking advantage of him. Yeah, you believe that he was like, all right, I'm not going to play around. I'm going to fight these guys and get my revenge on them. I do like that they still are trying to consider whether they should join the win team together because, again, even though it makes logical sense, Blake points it out too. It's just like, why would they hesitate besides of, I don't want to risk their lives and them being targeted by Lothar, but they're targeted by Lothar anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So why would they personally not want to join the win team? It's kind of a ego thing. They've been working alone this whole time. They don't want to be, you know, controlled or led by someone else, and especially they're the last of the Thunder team. And then if they go with the Wind Rangers, they're kind of like, are we losing ourselves? So I kind of understand the argument of why they would not want to join them. Now, I think this is the worst Mara Capri scene in the entire season because it does not need to exist whatsoever. It's not funny at all. Mara has her fish die, and I'm like, okay, that's not funny. Her crying all the time is not funny. It's annoying. I know that they were trying to do that. It is annoying, but this is an example of 2.5 minutes of material that could have been cut out and could have been diverted to shortening episodes. I also noticed starting in this episode, Lothar's outfit has been seeing some wear and tear. You can see it on the edges of the mask, so it's been wearing out over the several months of shooting. Now, there is some issues with this episode and from the Hurricaneer footage. It's because Hurricaneer Choobo was not banished per se, because he's a general and he was trying to enact plans. He'd failed and he wanted his revenge. It's pretty much the same from Hurricaneer, but there was no disconnect between the bad guys. So him accessing, the spells and stuff are all there. But later on, it causes issues. Now I want to talk about the comedy of the show. We always have problems with this series because of this. It's mainly Lothar's side. What I don't understand is that the writers who write the episodes are writing both the comedy on the ninja sides and the enemy sides, and the comedy on with Shane, Cam, Tori here, perfect, fine. They work on their characters. Shane likes to always, point out Cam. You always try to be right. You always try to be perfect. And now you're screwing up. And it works perfect because Cam's the straight guy. He's gonna be the one who's not laughing. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna do it. That works really good. But then we have those scenes with Mara and Capri about a dead fish, and it's just like these people wrote the same thing. This pretty much played out the exact same way in the Hurricaneer. They obviously couldn't use the footage, but it's pretty much the same. They get captured and they get trapped inside the alternate dimension, which is a pretty cool power, which I don't understand why Choobo never really used in the first place. And it's the same problem in Hurricaneer. A lot of these monsters have special abilities that only appear once and then never again. I do like this effect. It's kind of like, the hands grabbing and bringing him to here. It's kind of cool. Because you always wondered, like, what did that, pack backpack do on him? Because it has, like, this metal lock and stuff. I always found it odd that they really cared that Chubo stole the Scroll of Empowerment. Because, like, it's just a thing that makes you grow. You don't run out of it. Is it really a big deal? So, like, why is it such of a problem? So an example where if they had moved these him stealing the scroll of empowerment in the previous episode, they could have cut all the villains out and just simply focus on Chubo's side, because there was really nothing important that happened in the Hurricane episode that involved the other villains, and they could have simply dropped them and then shortened the episode even further. Now, I do like that this dimension actually can inhibit the Ranger's powers. That could be a really cool asset. And again, why would you get rid of Chubo's abilities if he can do that? It always seems like a waste when you finally get introduced to special abilities that these villains can do. And all the villains in Hurricane have special abilities, and that's why they're these generals. But we never really find out about them, or they're really used until it's basically the final bit where they're actually defeated, or just sort of big moment, but they just like ignore them. It's always felt weird that they always do that, and it's a common problem in Super Sentai slash PR. Now, speaking of these trucks, I didn't mind the concept of the semis and the Rangers being inside there. It was kind of an interesting thing. And really thought it would have been a cool way to expand on Cam's, you know, character in the series prior to him becoming a ranger, because you think, he would be the one driving and or operating the truck, so we can actually get scenes in there kind of feel like Knight Rider in that sense. But they never used these trucks. They only created them for a few times in the series, and then they just been relegated to exclusive toys for the toy lines. And they finished the interior for the Ninja mobile ops, and we just really never got to see anything in there. They never shot any scenes in there. It just feels like a waste. I'm glad they phased them out, but I still think it was a cool concept to have a mobile vehicle that can house the ATVs, the bikes, and they never took advantage of that, because it could have been a really cool feature to use, and or use as a backup, defensive station, mobility, maybe healing area, something. Now here's a plot hole in the story. Because Choobo is not a part of Lothor's gang anymore, how is he able to still call the Kelzacs? That doesn't make any sense. In the Hurricaneer footage, he's not separated, like I've said. Oh, and here's another problem. If Tori's megaphone can actually force the Kelzex to disappear, why doesn't she do that all the time? It's the obvious thing to do. This power that she has gets never gets used again. It's confusing. They always introduce these abilities and it's just like, oh yeah, we can do that, and then they don't care. I really think Cam really should just start out as simple as possible because Dustin, Tori, and Shane are very naive in a lot of areas. They don't care about the technical aspect of how the suits work or monsters work. They just want to stop them and, get all their friends back. Now, I will nitpick at this. Choobo's, pack was damaged, destroyed, and then in the next scene, it's magically repaired and brought back here. That's a problem in Hurricaneer as well. It's not like they reversed, like they used footage out of order. It's just the suit's magically repaired, and that's a common thing. I think if Choobo had been set up a little bit more serious, like his Sentai counterpart, he could have played out much more better and more believable so that you didn't really have a problem buying him. It's the same thing as Elgar. I never understand why PR does this. They'll have a serious monster from the Sentai and they'll decide, oh, let's change him into a goofy monster, and then they wonder why fans will complain that this doesn't match up. It's just like that's what's going to happen. And I mean, you can do it to a degree, but you still have to show that side of his serious side more often. The problem is they didn't think, oh, we're going to reach this point with Choobo. We got to start making him a little bit more serious through various episodes. Because a lot of times with the PR shows, when they have to adapt them, they're seeing them more as bottle episodes versus an overall arc where everything connects, because it's the amount of time they have to look at the footage, what episodes do we adapt, how do we, what characters that we can come up, what can they do in this footage, how do we, deal with this, what do we have to cut out and censor, not censor, and all this stuff causes them to speed through episodes or look at the episodes as self-contained. So it comes to this, a lot of times we have this problem with the characters don't work. And in some extreme cases, like Ripcon, really don't work and they just look like idiots and fools. And then when they show the Japanese footage from the ninja, it doesn't make any sense why he's competent and he works. This played a little bit differently out in the Hurricaneer episode. Basically, Hurricane Red is trying to tell Eco to actually shoot him, and then that's the reason why you could see them actually fighting. They kind of shortened this and changed it a little bit more. I think because it was probably playing in a little bit more serious tone, and they were like, oh, we can't really use this. It doesn't really work in the case of the characters and or scene. So they had to try to change it a little bit. It doesn't really work perfectly. This is also one of my favorite episodes because it's the first introduction to the Thunder Storm Megazord, and it's my favorite combination of all the Zords in Ninja Storm, and particularly a favorite one overall. I don't know, it's just, I think when they combine in the Hurricane Megazord, it's too much on top of it. While it looks cool having Cam there as well, I think the series worked better when just the five of them. Now, I do wonder how come the Scroll of Empowerment has this different visual style for Choobo. They don't really answer that. The only thing I could think of is that because they're generals, they get a special scroll, but it's like, why do that? I don't know. Now, the Mini Zord. The Mini Zord is pretty much the same from Hurricaneer in Ninja Storm. They kind of copied him I guess you can say Foraimaru's a little bit more funny, and certain bits he talks more, especially in Gokaiger, which unfortunately they lost. And I had hoped they at least had got the actor back who did him to at least get some extra lines back, but there was no continuity, and it was kind of disappointing because the Minizord, it was a cool concept, and I wish they actually had used him more in the show overall, because why not explore him like that? It's just like, you got an artificial Zord, like, why not use it? You can't deny that Choobo is actually doing a pretty good job, and honestly better than most of Lothar monsters. If they had to had one scene from the villain side, I would have shown Lothar being jealous of actually, Choobo actually pulling something like this off without their help. And it shows that it at least acknowledge that Choobo, well, he's an idiot and a fool and has failed me, but he did good. I would have appreciated Lothar a little bit more if he had at least acknowledged it, because Lothar tends to be a real jerk in a lot of areas when he should acknowledge when his generals or whoever did something good. He doesn't do it that often, and I really believe he should have done it here. One of the famous things with this transformation is Tori. Now, everyone knows that the cockpits of the Zords are in the front of the black pieces on their heads, usually. A exception for the Thunder Zords, they're actually in different compartments. I mainly pick on Tori's because her entire cockpit is removed from the combination, and they're not in a specialized cockpit that has all of them. That's only in the Hurricane combination. But this also affects Hunter, because Hunter's control room is also separated and split up. So his room has to either be on one or the other sides. I will also point out a modeling mistake with the CG model of the lion. When it transforms and closes its arms for this combination, the pivot joint actually does not go into the correct slot. It just goes into its hollow body. I find that line quite funny. In the Hurricanes one, it was a little bit more serious. He'd say, "You broke my stick." So both scenes play out. It's funny because you can appreciate the Super Sentai episode and the PR episode for different reasons. Like just that particular scene, because Chubo is goofy and he says a funny line. You can appreciate him because it just that's his character. But also, if you're watching Hurricanes, you're like, yeah, he's more serious, more dramatic. It's a more satisfying conclusion to the story, and it gives you that that closure on the Rangers so that they actually become a full team. I will say though, for the toy version of this finisher attack, doesn't work at all. The ripcord either skips or it doesn't turn right. It jams. So again, the toy is not really designed well. Unfortunately, it looks cool when you display it, but if you attempt to use some of the functions, it doesn't work right. Now, because Chubo survives and he got shrunk down, which again makes no sense. He got blown up here, then all of a sudden Mara gets him as a pet, and then later on he gets turned back to normal size, and then he's just an idiot buffoon. This really does not redeem anything. It makes the Mara scene even worse. It's just like nothing works. I always found this odd because when the Thunder Rangers were brainwashed, you thought they would have said no when they were brainwashed, and that's the reason why he left. But what did they talk about before while they were brainwashed? Because it doesn't really make any sense. They should not have really talked to him in any practical way because they're out of it. So it really never made sense that they came back, and they should have already had lost that opportunity. If you like my content, consider leaving a like and subscribing.